And now we are recording. Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Podcast. I'm Renaldo, McKenzie. I have with me an amazing gentleman who's been on the show before, Mr. John Anthony Castro. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
By the way, when he came on earlier, you were looking so fresh, so dapper. That's 21st century style for you, man. Now, by the way, how are you doing? How is everything?
Oh, good. Do you want me to give you an update on kind of what's happened?
Yeah, but I mean, some pleasantries. I know sometimes you said that there was you had some sad news in the family, and I know you guys were away. So I wanted to find out, how is everything? How is the family doing?
Oh, family, yeah. Everything's good with the family. It was the daughter of my cousin that unexpected. Well, I mean, kind of expectedly because she had a special neurological condition, but yeah, she finally succumbed to that. So it's called Miller-Riker syndrome. But yeah, we're good now.
Okay, good. Just so you know, for those watching, before I get to the podcast, I want to look at your Twitter page, and there's violence everywhere. I've been talking about violence, writing about violence, and trying to understand violence. As I teach Caribbean thought, the issue of violence will pop up, and we talk about human nature as a way to try to understand violence. But beyond that, I read your page just now. I read your page. I went on your Twitter page, and you said, thoughts and prayers without action is fake Christianity. We will be judged by our inaction to prevent more bloodshed. And I had to start by asking you that question. What were you getting at by saying that? Thoughts and prayers without action is fake Christianity. We will be judged by our inaction to prevent more bloodshed.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of Republicans tend to do whenever there's a mass shooting is right away, whenever there's a tragedy that benefits them, they're quick to exploit it right away. You see, this is what the left does, blah, blah. And when something happens that contradicts their narrative or doesn't support their positions right away, it's just like, don't politicize the situation. We're sending our thoughts and prayers. But again, thoughts and prayers without action, again, it's fake Christianity. And they like to right away say thoughts and prayers right away, because it's trying to claim the moral high ground, as though, oh, we're good Christian people. But it's really like, well, being a good Christian person is going to be taking action on those words. If you can prevent something and you're choosing to not do anything, then you are complicit in that. And not in the legal sense here in this part of life, but according to the faith that they subscribe to, they are going to be judged. And, it's that typical narrow-minded way of thinking of oh, I never did anything wrong, therefore I won't be judged harshly. And it's just like, no, there's also things that you never did. If there's a person starving and you walk right by them and let them starve to death, there's a person drowning and you choose to just sit down and watch them drown, you're complicit in those deaths. And so, it was my way of trying to communicate to some of my Republican colleagues and getting through to them and letting them know, you will be judged because of this inaction. And, they may be in safe districts, that they've gerrymandered to where, their job is protected. But one day they will be judged.
Yes. I'm happy I asked that question. That speaks about your motivation. People move and act from a motivation, from a deep principle, and this a goodwill towards men. And you are seeking to run for president, and you've spoken to us. We've seen several articles, some updates regarding your suit against Trump. And one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show was to get an update on that. But also, it's tax season, and many Americans started filing taxes yesterday, I believe. And you are the president and CEO of AI Tax. So I wanted to, and I actually read a statement that you made yesterday, and I retweeted it a minute ago. You said that if you'd like to support my politics and get a better tax result this year, you can do both by trying AI Tax. come for free. And you also said you get to see the results before paying. If you don't like the results, you can walk away as honest and transparent as it gets. So I want to start with taxes, since many people are thinking about taxes. And tell me a little bit about how people can access this AI tax and how it makes people's life better.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI tax. So over the past 2 years, our firm had been secretly working on this behind the scenes. We jokingly referred to it as the Manhattan Project, which is like we weren't allowed to talk about it outside the office. To date, I've been awarded 3 patents covering over 30 claims from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, covering specifically the deployment and use of artificial intelligence in tax planning and tax preparation. Basically, it's like TurboTax on steroids. Like in TurboTax, when you get to the dependent section, it just says, "Oh, list all your dependents." But a lot of people have questions like, "Hey, I took care of my niece for 7 months. 6 of those months she lived in my house, but one of those other months, she was in the other house, but I was still financially supporting her. Like, can I claim my niece or my brother? I'm still paying for all his expenses. Can I claim him as a dependent? Or what about my elderly parents? They don't live with me, but I have to cover all their medical expenses, right?" That's a very common theme, in American society. And so all of those, the answer to all of those questions is actually yes. But with AI tax, there's what we call modules, where it's simple yes or no questions that it'll ask you, and all you have to do is answer yes, no, and it'll say, okay, did the person live with you? Did you provide the majority of their support? And then there's a video that actually elaborates on that and sort of provides additional guidance to the user. And so you could run any person through this scenario, and it would tell you correctly whether they can be claimed as a dependent or not. And so it's a very, very powerful tool. And that's just what makes the big difference between AI tax and other tax programs.
And what has been the views of most of your users so far?
The average comes out to about 6,500. That's on average. The amount you get more with AI tax than you would with TurboTax or any other software. It can vary wildly. With some people, the result ends up being $1,500 difference, not a huge amount. With other people, it ends up being a $50,000 difference. It just really depends on your income range and various things that you qualify or don't qualify for.
And I understand that the federal government will be giving out less tax returns this year. The IRS is saying that people will be getting less on their tax returns this year, and that because of the federal government spending on COVID. So, do you think that some platform tax software or platform will be able to generate a little bit more, and will be able to circumvent and go around what we're hearing, that people will be getting less taxes this year?
It depends. If it's a standard W-2 situation, which is the vast majority of the American public, then yes, you're likely going to get a little bit of a smaller refund. But if you had any sort of for-profit activity on the side, that's what really makes the difference. So whether that's like with a podcast or something like that, is the idea behind it is, do you have an activity on the side, aside from W-2 income, that is income generating, that you intend to make a profit, and then all the expenses associated with that can then be used to offset ordinary income from the W-2. So with creative, and this is the time where, and we experienced this also after the 2008 market meltdown, back then, is companies were trying to find a way to increase their revenue, their bottom line, but they were only looking to traditional ways, right? Like cutting expenses or going into new profitable areas. During a recession, there's not new profitable areas really to tap into. So it was really about cutting expenses. And so that's why you see all these companies cutting jobs, right? Like, Apple just cut like 13,000 jobs or something. But what really sophisticated companies and taxpayers can do is cut your tax rate. That's how you actually end up increasing your effective net after tax income. So yeah, I think the smart ones are going to give AI tax a shot. And also, worst case scenario is you use AI tax, it doesn't produce a better result, and the fee is zero. So that's and when you look at it that way, if you pay zero to prepare your taxes, and you would have otherwise paid $50 or $100 or more, you still are saving. So no matter what, a user will have a net positive result using AI tax.
And some people, like myself, who have my own business and do several different things. I actually filed with, I've been using other software, and I had to pay in order to get peace of mind. And so you're saying that AI tax provides peace of mind without you having to pay that extra amount of money to get that.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry, my camera went out. I was trying to figure out what was going on there for a second. Correct.
Right now, and okay, now moving away from taxes, now back to politics, and we want to get an update as to what's going on with you. I know there have been quite a few news stories concerning your suit against Trump and the FEC, and we want to hear from you what's going on, what's the latest concerning your filing against Trump and the FEC.
Yes. So the first case against the FEC, the judge ended up ruling in December that I didn't have federal judicial standing to bring the case. So what he determined there was that I did have an injury. It was a political competitive injury, but that the FEC was not the one that caused that injury. That it was the candidate, Donald Trump, that committed that injury, or was committing that injury, ongoing injury. And so it was the court basically saying, you're suing the wrong person, you're not supposed to be suing the FEC, you're supposed to be suing Donald Trump. My theory hinged on statutory provision 52 USC 30101. I think it's sub 9, but it was the definition of a candidate. And my argument was that the statutory definition of a candidate by implication suggested a person that is eligible. Now, this is not a wild theory because the FEC was posed with this question back in 2015. And in that case, and it was a legal advisory opinion, they said that although they understood the reasonableness of interpreting the statute that way, that they felt the legislative intent behind the Federal Election Campaign Act was simply to regulate campaign finances and empower the FEC to do that, not to get into the world of becoming the arbiter of eligibility with regard to a candidacy. And so they self-determined that they did not have that authority. The court also looked at the congressional history and legislative intent behind FECA and determined also that they didn't have that authority. My position, though, I disagreed with the judge, and I filed a notice of appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit. And I basically am going to now posit that question before the DC Court of Appeals, which is technically, yes, you can interpret the statute that way. If you subscribe to conservative judicial philosophy, like Scalia, then you would agree that it is emphatically the province of the judiciary to say what the law is, and you would disregard legislative intent, which right now the DC Circuit skews conservative. So they would have to be hypocritical and go against their own judicial philosophy to rule against me. But of course, if you're liberal skewed in judicial philosophy, and liberal and conservative in the judicial realm is somewhat analogous, but in some other ways very different than liberal and conservative in the legislative context, like with regard to congressmen and senators. But if you skew more liberal, the liberal judicial philosophy tends to favor agency interpretations. So in this case, they would give a lot more deference to the FEC's interpretation of their own powers. And so we'll see how it goes. Ultimately, they could rule against me. I could see a judge going either way on this. It doesn't help that legislative intent is not on our side. But while that was pending and that notice of appeal was filed right before Christmas, on January 6th, and that was very intentionally, I flew to Palm Beach and I filed a direct lawsuit against Donald Trump. So now there's an active case, John Anthony Castro versus Donald John Trump. And actually funny, right now, we literally just this morning served Donald Trump at Mar-A-Lago. So he was served this morning with the lawsuit. The judge who was initially assigned to the case was Judge Eileen Cannon, the same judge that tried to illegally shut down the DOJ investigation and was overturned by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. So we were initially going to file a motion to recuse, citing her obvious bias, and everybody in the media criticized her for that decision. But we decided to leave her on the case. I view it best because the first thing I did is after I filed the lawsuit, within 3 days, she dismissed the complaint. And she said that it violated the shotgun pleading rule, which there was about 7 circuits that have cited to that, but the 11th Circuit has the most robust case law. They almost take a form over substance approach, which is a little bit, not a little bit, I think it's violative of procedural due process, but I digress on that. We amended the complaint. She didn't bring it up again. So it looks like we're good to go. But I prefer to leave Judge Eileen Cannon on the case because it's basically, this is going to end up before the Supreme Court anyways. So I prefer to see their best, most biased argument up front rather than getting a softball judge that agrees with us, approves everything. And then we don't really face any resistance until we get to the Supreme Court. So I'd rather deal with that now. But even though the 11th Circuit is pretty conservative, but more traditional, old school establishment. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be very interesting. We have these 2 sister cases, and just I definitely want to make this one public statement with regard to these cases, so that people don't get disillusioned. These cases are knowingly premature. I was consulting with numerous constitutional law professors, constitutional law scholars, attorneys, and they all said, John, you need to sue Trump when both you and him are registered and on the ballot, approved, right? Like stamped by the New Hampshire Secretary of State as coming, like your name is going to be on the ballot for the presidency, for the primary. They said once that happens, there's no question that you have standing, there's no question there's an injury, and there's no question a court can review that. You won't have any of these procedural hurdles. Right now, they're gonna attack it for ripeness, they're gonna attack it for standing, they're gonna attack it on all these procedural defects that have never been tested before the federal judiciary. So I said, you know what? Rather than all of us just sitting around talking and twiddling our thumbs for the next 10 months while we wait for New Hampshire to open up the filing process so I can get registered, I said, let me test these new theories. Let me test the wild theory that 52 U.S.C. 30101 sub 9 implies eligibility. And let's put that before the D.C. Circuit. If they rule against us, awesome. At least now there's no more question. There's no more debate about whether you can or can't. And then the one about Trump right now, they said no, they're probably going to attack it for lack of ripeness because you're a candidate for the FICA purposes, but not necessarily a candidate yet on the ballot. There's a lot of eligibility requirements. Even when you have millions of dollars like Kanye West, you might not end up on the ballot, for all these like procedural hurdles. And so, and I said, okay, well, if they shoot it down based on ripeness, then great. But again, at least we aren't talking and we're taking action. And that's what I'm a big believer in. I don't like sitting around talking. I prefer taking action. And, if there's 10 people in the room and 2 say, I think it'll work, and 8 say no, I'm going to give it a shot because there's 2 highly educated people that think it's possible. Let's get a ruling from the federal judge. And if the judge says no, at least now there won't be a 2-8 split anymore. It's just everybody's going to know, okay, you can't do that anymore.
This is powerful. I think I understand. I understand your approach to all of this now. It's premature yet. It provides a learning opportunity because every time you meet a hurdle, you learn something and you go back to the drawing board and present a stronger case. And so in terms of the DC circuit, so that case is no longer on the table. It's out of the door. It's through the window.
It's on the table. So we haven't got the briefing schedule yet, which is kind of odd. But we submitted the notice of appeal. We boiled down the question that the court has to answer, and it had to do with the traceability of the injury and the ability of the FEC to make an eligibility determination. And so we should be getting that any day now. The DC Circuit should be sending us a briefing schedule. They would send that to us, and then by this certain date, we have to submit our appellate brief, and then the government has to submit their reply, and then we get, the reply to the reply. And then after that, it'll be scheduled for an official hearing. That probably won't be till maybe March or May, somewhere around there. But at least we'll have that decision, right? Well before the November timeframe, when everybody said that for sure is when you would have both standing ripeness and meet all the criteria to expedite this through the courts. So we'll have that ruling. And then the case right now, personally against Trump, like I said, I'm guessing most likely his attorneys are going to motion to dismiss based on ripeness. The thing is that the Declaratory Relief Act, by implication, in many cases, it permits a court to make a determination before an issue is fully ripe. And especially in a situation like this, because you're simply asking for a declaration of everybody's rights. And so it's going to be interesting. Again, these are untested legal theories, untested legal routes that nobody's ever tested. And a lot of attorneys are too cowardice to even try it, right? Because they don't want their names associated with a failed attempt. Me as an entrepreneur, and every entrepreneur knows this, failure is our best friend. Failure is our best friend because every time you fail, you learn something from it. You continue to develop, sharpen your sword, come back, and it's that relentlessness that differentiates a successful entrepreneur from a failed entrepreneur. The only difference between a successful entrepreneur and a failed entrepreneur is the refusal to give up. And that's what relentlessness means. That's what it implies. I'm not afraid of failure. So I'm going to give it my best shot, make my best legal argument. And like I said, I'm being intellectually honest about the weaknesses in each case and how I think they might turn. But again, at least it's official. It's on the books. Right. For now, everybody cited that 2015 FEC advisory opinion to say that, oh, yeah, the FEC self-determined they don't have the legal standing to make an eligibility decision. Now they don't have to do that anymore. They can cite Castro v. FEC forever. That's going to be supplanted now as the citation for that. And once the DC Circuit rules on this, even if they rule against me, it's going to forever be cited as Castro v. FEC, DC Circuit 2023, as the case that the FEC doesn't have the power to make an eligibility determination. And so again, even if I were to kind of like lose with the objective, I win on the overall, substance, which is that I've added clarity to the law. That's no longer a question.
It's powerful. Yes. Thank you. Oh, this is powerful. And you said, I'm not afraid of failure. The refusal to give up, that relentlessness is what separates a successful and an unsuccessful entrepreneur. Quite a powerful statement. And that's what keeps you going.
Oh yeah.
And in terms of your campaigning and your campaigning, what's the latest with that? What's going on in terms of your campaign? What's the next steps for you in terms of you running? Because I know you said part of it is establishing standing, so you will definitely be
for sure.
You will establish standing. You'll be a nominee.
Exactly. So right now, the primary focus is growing the firm, getting through tax season very successfully, generating a lot of revenue as always. The revenue that's generated and the existing amount of funds and wealth I already have is going to be used to acquire a property in New Hampshire. And so we're looking at certain real estate properties in New Hampshire. The reason for that is what I intend to do is purchase a property in New Hampshire, preferably like a 6-bedroom home. And what I'm going to do with that is that's going to effectively serve as campaign headquarters. And so I'm going to head up there most likely in May, probably close in June, and then start hiring in July and probably start knocking on doors in August. And the idea behind that is August, September, October, I'm going to be knocking on doors in New Hampshire. And by the way, this is exactly what every candidate, including Obama, did. And the reason why New Hampshire and Iowa are always the first primaries in the whole country is because the state is so small. New Hampshire is like the size of the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I live. I've campaigned here. So I already know what it's like knocking on that many doors, the amount of calf muscle that you develop constantly walking everywhere,
Yeah.
the amount of the toll that it takes on your health. I lost probably 8 pounds when I was just running a 2.5 month campaign. And it's because you have to literally schedule in time to eat, make sure you have the proper calorie intake. It's intense. Most people don't know this, but it is very intense campaigning for office. But that's what I plan to do for all of, like I said, August, September, October, knocking on doors, introducing myself, and that can make the world of difference. How I pull out of New Hampshire is going to give us a bellwether of how I'll perform during the rest of the campaign. But here's the thing and then the key states that I'm going to get on the ballot on. I'm not trying to get on the ballot on all 50 states, although that would ultimately be the goal if we had the funding. But the only states we need to get with is Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Those are the key battleground states. And if I can get Trump kicked off of just one of those states, his path to 270 becomes almost impossible. So that's the goal, is to have standing in those states, bring those state court actions. And yeah, that's pretty much how it's going to go. Now, I'll tell you this as well. This is really important because I'm definitely trying to telegraph this. And some people have said, oh, you don't want to telegraph your intent to the other side. No, I do. Even if I were to poll at 5%, let's just say 5% in every state, I end up only getting 5% of the vote. People would laugh, right? Oh, that's a abysmal performance. Yes, in the primary. But after the Republican National Convention, and when you go to the general election, you realize that 5% really matters, because Wisconsin turned on 1.2%, Arizona turned on 0.9%, Georgia turned on 1.5%. All of these states, Wisconsin, Aaron, you get the point. Oh, sorry, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, I think, was about 1.6, 1.7. So all of these states turned on less than 2%. So if I control 5% of the Republican base, you can't carry a swing state without my block. So that is where, at the Republican National Convention, I would have a lot of bargaining power as far as the direction of the party and who the ultimate nominee is going to be. And I always, of course, retain the nuclear option of walking out of the Republican National Convention and taking my block of voters and endorsing the candidate on the Democratic side. And so this happened. It's not unheard of. It happened in 1984. They were called the Reagan Democrats. They left the Democratic National Convention and they went over to the Republican National Convention and they publicly endorsed Ronald Reagan. Some people said it was a political stunt. Doesn't matter. It had the impact. He ended up sweeping the entire country. So
strategy.
Whether they like it or not, my campaign and what we plan to do, it is going to have a tremendous impact on the overall outcome of the 2024 election.
John Anthony Castro is speaking with us, giving us an update as it relates to the suit. And just so you know, breaking news, this morning, you filed a suit directly against Donald Trump, not against the FEC, but against Donald Trump, in Florida Circuit Courts. In the Florida Circuit.
We filed the lawsuit on January 6th, and only today we were finally able to serve him at Mar-A-Lago, because Secret Service had been impeding our ability to serve him with service of process. But we sued him in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida's Palm Beach Division, which is only about 15 minutes from Mar-A-Lago.
Okay, great. So that's breaking news coming in. Thank you so much. And let us know what's going on with the Republican Party. You have a new speaker. You guys dominate the House, but it took 15 rounds of vote to finally declare Kevin McCarthy, who everyone thought that he was the heir apparent. What does that suggest? What does that speak to the Republican Party and what's going on in terms of the leadership and who controls the party and where is Donald Trump in all of this?
Yeah, so Donald Trump didn't really have any influence on any of that. This bloc, primarily led by Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and other fanatical right-wing zealots that are, definitely outliers. It was a smart move, I mean, they're politicians, right? So they read the rules, they understood how to gain leverage over Kevin McCarthy. So although he's the speaker, it's speaker in name only. He caved in and just gave them way too much. And yeah, it just continues to show that, this QAnon element of the, I would just say the QAnon caucus of the Republican Party, has a lot of pull within the party, and slowly they're gravitating away from traditional conservatism, which calls for small, limited government. You don't want a government very powerful, and they are instead advocating for larger federal government and expansion of federal governmental powers. And it's just bizarre, because once you grab everything about conservatism except small, limited government, and then you start getting overly obsessed with people's individual private lives, that's when you start descending into fascism. And that's really what this element within the Republican Party is. They probably don't realize it, but it's a new form of fascism. And so that's why, people refer to it sometimes as neo-fascism. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time, but I would say it also exposed the all-out practical civil war going on within the Republican Party, and the fight, to determine its future trajectory.
So I guess would you consider this a very good time, a very good moment, something that is needed within the Republican Party, the chaos or that's happening in terms as they've tried to find themselves for the 21st century?
Yeah. I mean, there's not much of a Republican Party platform right now. Right now, it's just, the Republicans have realized that what gets votes is not nerdy ideas and formal platforms, but boogeymen. The school boards, the books, the LGBTQ issues, drag queens, anything to not have to explain to their constituents what their actual policy objectives are, because right now the Republican Party is very intellectually bankrupt, and doesn't really have a clear-cut agenda on actual concrete policies that are going to improve the daily lives of their voters. And also they're in a very awkward position because Donald Trump brought into the Republican Party a lot of working class voters. And so they know that they can't directly address working class issues without upsetting a lot of their trade alliances. And so that's why they're sticking to the boogeyman issues while secretly pushing an agenda that is actually contrary to the interests of the working class and middle class in America.
Wow. And I wanted to get your opinion on what's going on immigration briefly. What's going on the border, and President Biden decided. I think there is some kind of arrangement with countries of NAFTA. I think his decision is to have 30,000 immigrants, allow 30,000 immigrants on humanitarian grounds to come into the U.S., while he will be more aggressive in terms of expelling people who cross the border illegally. However, I understand that there's some kind of challenge to this. Do you know? Are you familiar with this?
I mean, yeah, it all comes down to the thing is that the Supreme Court is again just shooting itself in the foot repeatedly. During Democratic administrations, they want to limit the power of the executive branch, but then during times of Republican administrations, they want to give them a lot more leeway. And then you have all these you have all these Supreme Court decisions contradicting each other, right? Like the executive branch can do this, no, they can't. And I mean, if you just plain reading of the statute, basically says the executive branch can do whatever it wants, right? They have what's called prosecutorial discretion. They can choose to admit people, not admit people. There's a wide range of power that has always traditionally been reserved to the executive branch, but they're just really contradicting themselves. And also, the thing that's always upsetted me about immigration is it's like debating and trying to resolve your runny nose. It's just like you can do whatever you want, and stuff paper in there where, you're not solving the issue. What's the actual issue? Do you have a cold? Do you have a flu? Do you need to take a shot? So in other words, we need to be looking at what are our policies in South America? Why are people leaving these countries in droves? And so people then say, oh, well, in places like El Salvador, it's the violence. Okay, well, then the solution is simple. We need to send in assistance, whether involving U.S. Marines as well. But then the conservatives are like, well, no, because we're non-interventionists and we don't want to do that. So then it's just like, okay, well, do you have any actual logical long-term solutions other than constantly just dealing with the symptom? The symptom is people showing up to the border, between the United States and Mexico, and not all coming from Mexico, of course, coming from all of South America and even sometimes from Africa. It's just like, why are they coming? What are we not doing in their home countries to promote stability, peace, economic justice, so that they have a path to a decent life? And when you don't provide that, when you don't provide basic stability, right? Like, I don't want to walk down the street and not get murdered. When you can't provide basic stability, when you can't provide economic justice so that they can actually, generationally, like we do here in the US, my great grandfather was poor, and then my father took us to the working class, and then, I took our family to the upper middle class, and so on and so forth. When you don't provide those economic ladders, people are not going to want to participate in that system. And so they're going to leave that country and go to the beacon of light and liberty in the world, which is the United States. And so this is the land of opportunity, the American dream. And can you blame them? Of course not. They're just trying to seek what's best for them. We got lucky, right? I mean, we won the genetic lottery and we happened to just be born in this country. They didn't. You could have very well been born, in El Salvador, and you, using all your intellect, would be finding out a way, how do I get out of here? Because there's no way I can have a decent life in this country. And we need to start looking into that interventionist policies. And that's what I'm in favor of, getting a lot more involved, including the provision of police and military assistance.
And it's quite interesting that you said that. I wrote the book, Neoliberalism. I have to invoke my book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Economic Equality, Poverty and Resistance, looking at people of the global south and how globalization has affected these countries, developing countries. We usually call them third world countries, and we talk about interventionist policies. And in retrospect, there was the IMF, structural adjustment policies, to help to develop these countries. But the problem is the economic assistance that was provided to many of these countries wasn't the kind of assistance that they needed. So, of course, I believe in interventionist policies, but the policies also have to be one that is targeted and where these countries have a say in the direction of. But then there is corruption in some of these countries, which I'm talking about corruption today on Friday in my class. We have to also deal with corruption in these countries, because many of these countries have been given billions of dollars, but you don't see the investment, So there's so much happening that interventionist policies have to also include some kind of engagement that ensure that the monies are being spent in an effective way, but in a way where they have some kind of autonomy which speaks to development. But then you don't want these countries to be competitive. Maybe people want this instability. Instability helps. But anyway, those are philosophical arguments that we can get into.
Yeah, it's complex, right? I mean, like it's a multifaceted issue, and that's what I like about a lot of people were unhappy with the results of the 2022 election. I was actually really happy. I love the idea of a split legislature. I love the idea of Democrats in control of the Senate, Republicans barely by a thread in charge of the House. And the reason for that is I want both sides to talk to each other, right? Like when one side completely dominates, that's where it starts creating a lot of instability, and even during the speaker fight, you had that rare scenario where you saw Paul Gosar talking with Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, right? Like arch enemies, on the political spectrum. And yet there they were talking, and so that actually made me smile, because I was like, good, because at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't know about me is I am a moderate. If I had to try to put a title on it, I'm an equilibrianist. I want a balance. I want both sides to talk to each other again. I want this, toxic, all Republicans are Nazis, all Democrats are communists. It's ridiculous. I truly believe that everybody is motivated out of love for this country. And, we shouldn't get into that really ugly, nasty politics of like, the other side are a bunch of Satan worshiping pedophiles and, the QAnon wing, right? And it's obviously insane,
Powerful. Thank you. And we will end with this moment. You are in Dallas, are you not?
Yeah.
And there's been much talk about Dallas Cowboys. I play fantasy football. I watch football a lot. What's the mood like? What's the mood? And I'm in Philadelphia. I'm a fan of Philadelphia. We're looking forward to the game. We're looking forward to the 49ers. What's the mood like in your neck of the woods? Knowing what happened with
everybody obviously, what's the old saying? Victory has a thousand sons, but defeat is an orphan. So I mean, right away, everybody started pointing fingers. It's like, oh well, Dak sucks. He kept on getting intercepted, and it's just kind of like, well, no, I mean, like he threw. That was a good throw. It was just, you had a really good cornerback. But the kicker, I mean, come on, Maher. He gets paid $965,000 a year to miss field goals. I mean, you could put my grandmother, on the field to do that and pay her half that amount. In one game, he missed more field goals than any kicker since 1932. He missed 4 field goals in one game. So, I mean, I think that's pretty clear, where blame lies. And I really think Jerry Jones knows that also. And during the pregame warm-up to San Francisco, Maher had already missed 3 kicks. And so Jerry Jones literally went all the way down to the field, walked out into the field, put his hands on, Maher's shoulder, and was like, hey, you okay? Kind of like when the owner does that, that's his way of saying you need to do good today or you're fired. And I really do think that, to satisfy Cowboys fans, I think Jerry Jones should replace Maher as the kicker. I mean, for God's sakes, you can't get anything worse than somebody that's going to break a record since 1932 for sucking that bad on the field as a kicker. It's like you got one job and you can't do that right. So that being said, I think it's now out of the box that I'm a Cowboys fan, and yeah, we were all pretty sour over here.
Yeah. Do you think they should replace Dak Prescott? No.
No. I think Dak is awesome. I just think we just got outplayed, fair and square by the 49ers. They have a great team. They did a great job. It's nothing on their side. But I think if, you had to create a list of people to blame, the only one I can honestly put on that list is Maher. So if it was me and if it was my team and my billions on the line, like Jerry Jones, I would probably start, trying out, looking at the stats of college football kickers and giving somebody fresh a shot.
Thank you. Well, I've been listening to commentators. I watched Stephen A. Smith. I didn't hear them mentioning Michael Irvin mentioning the kicker. I probably missed some of that, but I knew. I think I'm aware that he did miss quite a few. But let's see what's going to happen. And we hope that they develop chemistry. I don't think they should change the dynamic of the team. I think sometimes when they do that, it affects the chemistry of the team, and chemistry is also important, and they can just learn some of these, because I think they had a very good team. I think Cowboys had a very good team. Probably they were missing only OBJ, probably. I'm just messing. Odell Beckham. I'm just messing around. But thank you so much. Thank you. This was quite an amazing time, and I'm looking forward to having you back again. And I'm wishing you all the best. Any last words?
No. Next time we're able to chat, I'll give you guys a more substantive update. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully we can get a victory on this, because that would be amazing.
And you're going to be joining me on joining my class on one of these Fridays, I think sometime in late March, talking about American politics.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
I look forward to it.
Man. But I want to thank you so much, and I appreciate you, the Neoliberal Round podcast. We appreciate you and your contributions to the show, and I'm wishing you all the best in your endeavors. Take care. And just so you know, guys, you can visit John Castro by going to www.johncastro.com. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Just go to the real John Castro handle on the channel.
Yeah.